Good morning, guys. Today I wanted to give you my 5 keys to brewing great espresso. I'm going to try to cover some of the things that matter regardless of your equipment type. So whether you're on a big commercial machine in a cafe setting or you have a home machine, these are 5 critical things that you can make a difference with whatever equipment you have. First one's got to be starting with good coffee. I think it goes without saying that if you're starting with freeze-dried Nescafe, it's probably not going to turn out as well as if you start with a coffee from a high-quality producer and roaster. Today we're using, it's a 50-50 blend of a washed geisha and a natural bourbon from Guatemala, since that's where we're at. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we're going to use a scale. So this is potentially the most important piece of the whole puzzle. If we don't know how much coffee and water we're using and we can't be consistent with that, we're not going to get great coffee the first time, and if we accidentally do, we're definitely not going to be able to repeat it. So I typically brew to a ratio. In any new coffee I'm trying to get just right, I start with a 1 to 1.65 ratio. So what that means is for every 1 part coffee that I put in the portafilter, I'm going to use 1.65 parts water. And if I want it stronger or less strong, I can change that. Well, just to make the math easy, if we were using a 20-gram basket and we were doing a 1 to 2 ratio, for every 20 grams of coffee, we would use 40 grams of water. There's just a multiplication problem. Whatever the 1 is, you multiply by the ratio amount, and that's what your water is going to be. So if you have a smaller basket, if you're just doing a 9 or 10 gram shot in a small steam espresso machine type portafilter, you can still do the same ratios. You can still do, for every 10 grams of coffee, you can multiply that by 1.65, and that's a 16.5 gram shot is what you want your actual espresso shot to weigh. So using a scale will help you be really consistent, and once you figure out which recipe you like, being able to repeat that is an important step. So for my case, I'm using 19.5 gram shot with about a 33 gram, or 19.5 gram dry coffee with 33 grams is my finish weight. So I'm going to get that started. Step 2 is going to be a level and even tamp. And I know that sounds weird. It's one of the key pieces of this process, but our goal in making espresso is being as machine-like as possible so that we can take the human element out of it. So I find that this distributor and this tamper work well to get consistency. We want to compress this into the portafilter as evenly as possible. Sorry about all the dogs in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. But if you look at this portafilter, it's completely level, the tamper in relation to the portafilter. So if this was crooked, the lower side here is going to be more compressed, and the water will just go through the less compressed side. So even though we've got a 19.5 gram dose of coffee in this portafilter, the water is just going to go through half of it. So a nice even tamp and consistent pressure every time is super important. You don't have to do a ton of pressure, especially if you have a decent grinder. Just don't do so much pressure that it's hurting your wrist. You can adjust your grind setting to how you tamp. So if you tamp with just 5 or 10 pounds of pressure, you can just make the grind a little bit finer, and that makes up the difference there. The goal is consistency. So a nice level and even tamp every single time exactly the same with the same amount of pressure every single time exactly the same. So if we can take the human element out, nothing's really going to change with the grinder. Nothing's really going to change with the machine. The thing that can screw us up when making coffee is what we do different as the human element. So like I said, we're doing 19.5 grams in, and we're going to do 33 grams out. So there's a lot of different things that we could do. We could change our dose amount. We could change our ratio, so how much water we're using in comparison to that dose. We could change how fine our grind setting is. We could change a whole lot of different variables. If you're trying to dial in and get the coffee perfect, one of the keys, key number 4, is make sure you're only changing one variable at a time. So I'm here at 32, almost 33 grams, and it took 45 seconds. So I know just from brewing this for a long time, that's too slow. So the water was in contact with the ground coffee for too long, and it has extracted all that good flavor. But then the harder to get, the stuff that takes a long time to get to the dissolvable solids that are difficult, tend to be the dissolvable solids that taste bitter. So when a shot goes that long, it tends to be over extracted and bitter tasting. So for the one variable that I'm going to change to solve that problem is I'm going to make my grind a little bit coarser and do everything else exactly the same. Key number 5, this is one that gets overlooked often, especially if you're in a bar, if you're in a busy cafe type setting. Taste everything. So even though I just made my my change, because I know it, I'm very familiar with this coffee, I'm still going to taste it every time. And what I suspected was correct. The shot was long, which means the water was in contact with the coffee for too long, dissolved all the great flavors, but then also got a lot of really bitter tasting dissolvable solids out of that. So it's an over extracted shot. It's on the bitter side. By coarsening it up a little bit on the grinder, the water will be able to pass through a little bit quicker. It won't dissolve those really bitter solubles. It'll be a much more balanced shot. So the last key in brewing great coffee is making sure you taste all the time. The more you can build up kind of a bank of flavor information in your brain, the more you'll have to draw on to be able to recognize whether it's an under extracted shot or an over extracted shot. So the really quick simplified version of how to brew great coffee, just follow those 4 steps regardless of the equipment you've got. You're going to start making better coffee.